The Five Love Languages. I know that rings a bell. Did you know that that book by Dr. Gary Chapman has now been translated into 49 languages? I'm sure that number just keeps going up, Dr. Chapman.
It does, and it's very, very encouraging. You know, with my background in anthropology, that's one of the things that surprised me, because I thought, you know, I discovered this in Middle America. I know it works, you know, and then the Spanish publisher came and wanted to publish it, and I said, I don't know if this works in Spanish. And they said, we've read it and it works. And I said, okay. So then the French and the German, and it's just gone on and on. I think the deep need for human love is the reason that book continues to sell, and it's helping couples learn how to connect, how to communicate love in a meaningful way to each other.
There's the heart right
Yeah.
there. Well, you are a pastor, speaker, author, obviously best-selling author, but listen to this. Dr. Chapman speaks extensively throughout the U.S. and internationally on marriage, family, and relationships. The government of Singapore invited him to present his marriage seminar there, and the Chaplain's Office of NATO issued a special invitation for Dr. Chapman to speak to the NATO forces in Germany. Other engagements have taken you to England, Africa, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Mexico, and Hong Kong. I wonder what they were looking for when you were invited to address the troops.
You know, I think the reality is the divorce rate in the military is 3 times higher than the civilian divorce rate. And I think the chaplains in particular are extremely concerned, and they really want to do something to enrich marriages. I've been very impressed with the chaplains that I've worked with. And what I do is share with them how these principles work in a marriage relationship when you're in the military, because they're deployed a lot of the time. So I talk to them, for example, about how to speak the love languages long distance.
Oh, of course.
And they will say, well, wait a minute. If physical touch is my language, how can that be communicated halfway across the world? And I said, what you do is you write a letter and you say, if I were with you right now, I'd give you the biggest hug and kiss you've ever had. And they feel it. You know, it's not the same, but they feel it because you're speaking their language. You're thinking about them, and you're telling, if you were here, this is what I would do. It communicates.
It says, I know what you need.
That's
doesn't
right.
It?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it.
Now, this master's in anthropology, I wonder how much it has helped in the wonderful words, the wisdom that you bring. I think I've heard like mother, like daughter, but your chapter adds like father, like son. This is no myth.
Yeah, I wish I'd known that before I got married.
Uh-oh.
What I say to young people is this. If you're dating and serious about dating, look at her mother, because in 10 years, she's very likely to be very similar to her mother. You look at his father, because in 10 years, he's likely to be very much like his father.
How likely?
Well,
like what percentage?
If his father's an alcoholic, there's a good chance he'll be an alcoholic. If her mother is always interrupting her husband when he's telling a story, and she says, no, honey, it wasn't Thursday, it was Friday. No, honey, that wasn't 1957, it was 1958. If she's interrupting him, there's a good chance she's going to interrupt you when you talk. Now, when I say that, the young people say, wait a minute, you don't mean I have to turn out to be like my father? And I say, no, you don't. But now is the time to do something about it. If your father's an alcoholic, now's the time for you to study alcoholism and you to study stress and positive ways of handling stress, so you don't end up doing what your father did and become an alcoholic. And if you recognize in your mother some things that you don't like, now's the time to work on changing those things. So no, you don't have to turn out to be like your parents, but we are greatly influenced by our parents. And now's the time to begin to work on changing those things. And the good news is you can change those things. I suggest, for example, that a young man make a list of all the things he admires about his father, things he would like to see in his own life, and then make a list of the things about his father that he doesn't want to repeat in his life. And those are the things you need to be working on.
You know, it points to something you emphasize in the book. You need to take time.
Yeah.
This is a project. Now, when you were a young man and looking to marriage, there was no marriage preparation.
No.
I think most ministers, pastors, require some sort of premarital counseling at least before they perform a wedding.
They do, and that's good. I applaud that. I really think that ought to be. But I also think that we ought to start earlier. I think in high school and certainly in college, we need to be doing things in our churches, helping young people learn some of the skills that they're going to need when they get married. Even if it doesn't have, they're not engaged yet, they're not thinking about it yet, but they need to be thinking about it. So if we can do both, premarital counseling after they're engaged, but also do some counseling before, not necessarily counseling, but some education beforehand. So
before you decide this is the one.
That's right, so that they can learn some of the things that are going to help them throughout their lifetime.
Now, this points to how to solve disagreements without arguing. And you say in marriage, it's never having my way. Rather, it's discovering our way.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds so fairy tale-like.
Yeah, you see, I wish I had known how to solve conflicts without arguing. You know, when you're in love, at least when we were in love, I didn't anticipate we would have any conflicts because we didn't. You know, I would have done anything for her when I was in love. She would have done anything for me. But when you get married and come down off the high, you realize you disagree on a lot of things. And so I didn't have any plan. And if you don't have a plan for handling conflicts, what do? You explain it to the other person. Because you know that it's right. You wouldn't be thinking this if it weren't right. So let me explain it to you one more time. And then we explain it again and again, and before long we're arguing with each other. And we're yelling at each other. And then we begin to wonder, why did we get married? We don't even like each other. So we've got to have a plan for handling conflicts. Every marriage will have conflicts. So you can learn this before you get married. How to solve conflicts with your parents. How to solve conflicts with your roommates. Learn how to solve conflicts without arguing. And at the very heart of that is learning how to listen empathetically. Put yourself in the shoes of the other person. Try to look at the world through their eyes as they explain what they think and what they feel. And if you do that, you can honestly say, you know, I think I understand what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, let me share my perspective, and you share your perspective. And then they can say to you, well, I see what you're saying. We disagree now. How can we solve the problem? And you spend your energy solving the problem rather than spending your energy trying to convince them that they're wrong and you're right. You know, if you win an argument, the other person loses. It's no fun to live with a loser. So why create one?
I love that your wisdom doesn't just come from study. You've wrestled all this out. It's been tried and tested in your own life, in your own marriage. And you have such a wonderful sense of humor. I wish I had known that toilets are not self-cleaning.
You know, 6 weeks into our marriage, I said to my wife, honey, the toilet's dirty. And she said, I know, I was wondering when you're going to clean it. I said, I don't know how to clean toilets. And she said, I can teach you.
Well, that was a gracious response.
Yeah, you know, we never discussed that. I just assumed she'd clean the toilet.
You're the woman, you clean the bathroom.
Yeah, but she assumed I would do it, you see. So one of the things I say is before you get married, you need to talk about who is going to do what. It's not just toilets. There's a lot of things that have to be done. Someone will have to buy food, cook food, clean dishes, vacuum floors, you know, all these things have to be done. Who's going to do what? So I suggest make a list of all the things that will have to be done. And then separately, she puts her initials by the ones she thinks she will do, and his initials by the ones she thinks he will do, and he does the same. Then they come together. Maybe they agreed on half of them, but the other half, he thought she would and she thought he would, and now you negotiate those things. Do that before you get married so that you go into marriage on the same page.
I'm looking at all these wonderful chapters, and they're all practical. What one represents the biggest hurdle for you in your marital journey?
Oh.
Because you had to learn it all after the fact.
Yeah. These are things I did not know when we got married. I think one is that apologizing is a sign of maturity, because I came into marriage without a model of apologizing. My father did not tell me what some fathers say, real men don't apologize. My father didn't say that. But I never heard my father apologize, so I had no model. So that was a huge step for me to learn to apologize to my wife, because in my mind, I saw apologizing as a sign of weakness. It's admitting that I was wrong. And nobody likes to be wrong. But the reality is, we all fail. We all hurt each other. And if we don't learn to apologize, we will never have a good marriage. Apologizing and forgiving is a necessity to have a good, successful marriage. But I didn't know that. I had to learn that the hard way. But you can learn that long before you get married, because there are other people you need to be apologizing to. Your parents, your roommates, your co-workers. I mean, there's a lot of people that you need to apologize to because you hurt people. Every one of us hurts people. And learning how to apologize, I think, was a huge issue for us.
Oh, you just keep bringing us this wonderful wisdom. I've said this before. I think this is the fourth emphasis in our break forth visit on marriage. Wonderful people are really concerned that we turn things around for this bedrock relationship, the foundation of our communities and our countries. Who would you like to see reading this book, Dr. Chapman?
Well, I wish every college student could read it, because that's kind of the audience that I'm really shooting for. I also think married couples will read it and say, we haven't learned these things yet.
It's not too late.
That's right. And once they learn these things, I hope they'll give it to their young adult children before they get married to help them learn how to have a good marriage.
You will have some chuckles, and you will have so much help in dealing with one or more things that are maybe robbing you of the full enjoyment of what God intended for your marriage right now. Things I wish I'd known before we got married at our e-store right now. And you know, this subject does represent about 20% of the calls that come into our prayer lines. They're always available. Take advantage of them right now if you need prayer for anything. Dr. Chapman, thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. Always great to be with you.